We've made it. Last lecture, last topic of the semester. And I've actually got a fair amount to share with you here. And so bear with me. This is probably going to end up being a little bit long. So let's jump right in. True or false? Follow me on this one. True or false? The statement. If you're not fighting for what you want, you do not want it enough. Is that true to you? Yeah. Okay. If you're not fighting for what you want, you don't want enough. Or are you kind of hedging and going, oh, it could be false? One of the reasons it might be false is if we're taking into account privilege. Like maybe you really want it, but you don't have the opportunities in our society that you need, you are required to get something. And so to say, oh, well, you don't want it enough, it's kind of going back to that like structure and agency. No matter how hard you work and free will, structural inequalities can get in the way kind of thing. So let's play around with this for a little bit. If you're not fighting for what you need, you do not need it enough, right? That's getting to that same idea of, well, we need housing, we need food, um, we need money, right? We need jobs that earn us money and stuff. And so that idea to say to somebody, well, then you don't need it enough is not really, really fair. But let's keep going with this. Let's focus in on one word in particular, the word fighting. If we changed it, you're not advocating for what you want. If you're not talking about what you want, you don't want it enough, whatever. So if we were to change that word, is it as an effective like statement? Because like when I say fighting, what do you think of? I'm not advocating for punching people, but like yelling, passion, like this is not okay, standing up, like this is enough's enough. So should the word fighting be the one that's there? I'm getting really nerdy about words, I understand. But thinking about what motivates people. Okay, I'm going to play with it one more time. If you're not fighting for what others need, you do not want it enough. If you're not standing up for others, we're talking about social change, and a lot of social change takes place in relation to activism, right? What gets you involved? If you are not willing to fight, to contribute to what others need, can you go, oh my gosh, I care so deeply about this topic? I don't know. I don't know. I'm coming to this last lecture and I just have a whole bunch of questions. I don't have many answers because we're all still trying to figure this out, hopefully together. Okay, another true or false. You ready? Nobody's going to come to the meeting unless they have a reason to come to the meeting. Again, we're talking about kind of motivation and what gets people involved, right? So it's so funny when I ask this as a true or false question in classes on campus, because sometimes students will be like, false. And I was like, well, wait, why would you go to the meeting? Well, if it's like a work meeting, well, that's your reason, right? So like, how do you stop by a lot of meetings that you have absolutely no reason to go to? And so then that begs the question, how do you get somebody motivated to come to a meeting? The answer I usually hear is food. And when I say what food, the answer I usually hear, sometimes it's donuts, something like that, but usually it's pizza. So the pizza people. Think about, do you want the pizza people, the people who only come to the meeting to grab a slice of pizza? Do you even want them to come to the meeting? A lot of people are like, ah, no. But like, how do you get somebody in the door to learn about some kind of aspect of social justice or something that you're fighting for, or something that you're saying is not okay, that's something you want to create social change about? Maybe that's pizza person who just was hungry and the pizza smelled good as they walked by the room or whatever. Like maybe they're the best volunteer ever. Maybe they're the hardest worker. Maybe they know all these resources. Maybe they're like this amazing activist. And they would have never known unless you'd offered them the opportunity to come into that meeting and eat a slice of pizza. But also think about this too. A lot of times, if you think about like if you were to be in a room, maybe a classroom, you and your friends, you're gathering together, you want to start momentum for something, you're going to put together $40. What does that buy now? Like pizza and a half or something with the way the world is going. But like, think about, do you put the pizza by the door or do you kind of put it in the back of the room so that people have to like really walk in to go get the pizza? And then that pizza person might be like, oh, sorry, I have class here. Let me sign my email up on your sheet and see you. But like that pizza person, if you stop them, they're going to be polite for a minute. And so think about what can you say to them Like if you think about like an elevator pitch, you've heard of that, where like you're in an elevator with like the CEO of a company that you work for or something, and you only have that elevator ride to change their mind about something. Like, what would you say to that person who's holding that pizza and says that they have class in 5 minutes? Like, you only have 30 seconds. What do you say to them for them to be like, wait, what? No, and want to get involved? Nobody's going to come to the meeting unless they have a reason to come to the meeting, which means to get people the momentum of it, you got to figure out how to give them a reason. Okay, one more. The bulldozers are coming. You'll be out on the street tomorrow. Imagine somebody comes pounding on your door to your place that you live. The bulldozers are coming tomorrow. Is that better? And let's focus on the word better, because what do we mean by better? Is that better than be asking, would you like to be a part of the community planning process? Better, again, kind of, I'm thinking, defined as most effective. What's going to get people involved? The bulldozers, like somebody's pounding on your door. The bulldozers are coming. You're going to be out on the street tomorrow. Like they're plowing everybody's houses down, hot plowing everybody's, living, dwelling spaces down. What's the primary emotion in relation to that? You're losing your housing tomorrow? Fear, right? Is fear the best motivator? Best with asterisks, right? Best means effective. It doesn't mean moral or good-hearted. Like, no. It's a pretty strong motivator, right? I would argue it might be in some ways the strongest. I'm getting like really, I guess, dramatically voiced kind of, but right? I don't know. Like I said, I have a lot of questions, not a lot of answers. Okay, imagine this though. Somebody comes pounding on your door. The bulldozers are coming. And you know what? The next day, the bulldozers never come. And they don't come the next day either. Everything seems fine enough. When they come back to your door and they're pounding again, going, the bulldozers, no, I told you last time, but now they're really coming. Do you believe them? Uh, 15 years ago, I would have said, no, they've lost trust. They've lost respect. They weren't honest. I don't know anymore. I really don't know anymore. Think about fear as the motivator, and I don't know, it's a lot to think about. But I go back to what all three of these aspects are getting to is what motivates you to want to create social change. Now, some of you are activists. You are activist minded. You're getting out there. That's how you want to make a difference. And so let's talk about how to become an activist. You decide what you can't, like what is just not okay to you. And you learn extensively about that issue. You don't just have surface level knowledge. You want to have depth and history and lived experiences and really, really, truly learn about it. And you want to find people. You want to find your pizza people and make a plan and, be organized in the way that you want to go about this. You want to keep recruiting more people and finding more people that are willing to join in to make a difference in what you are passionate about. You want to be talking all of the time, and you want not only to learn about the issue up front, but to constantly be updated about what is going on with the issue to stay in the know. And then you want to celebrate small victories because a lot of times fighting for things that people need takes a very, very, very long time and can be really disheartening at times. And so making sure to celebrate the small victories and not give up. Now, for some of you, you're like, I'm not an activist. I know. Technically, I don't feel like I am either. I actually, as a double major, sociology and women and gender studies, my women and gender studies degree at Cal State Fullerton, I had to do a 6-unit class. So it was 3 units of an activism internship. And then it was 3 units of a class that met once a week that we were tasked with planning 4 different protests on campus. And then we had to write a paper after each protest. We could decide whatever it is that we wanted to organize, how we wanted to do it, but that was what we had to do together as a class. And I quickly learned that I was, I'm a like person who wanted to be a teacher. I love teaching. I can stand up in front of people and talk. It still kind of freaks me out, but whatever. Like I was so like, don't hand me the bullhorn. I did not want to be the person out there yelling. So I would constantly volunteer as fast as I could to be like, I'll make the posters. I'll get this. I'll get like, I'll do all the work stuff. So that when it came time to be like the person out front, like I'd already contributed. And then I proceeded to write 4 papers, like in crises of like, what is wrong with me? I believe so wholeheartedly in this, but like the definition of activism. So maybe some of you are feeling like a little bit like, I don't hand me the bullhorn either. But there are things that everybody can do. You're already doing some of them. And so, and you know what these things are. You're learning. And to continue to learn, to be a voracious learner can be so, so important in this world. To be a listener and a reader. Reading nonfiction, reading fiction, reading trusted news sources, just reading about others' lived experience, reading about what's going on in the world. Sorry, I know you are sick of writing papers and stuff, but you're all technically highly trained writers by virtue of a college education. And so writing can be a huge, huge part of things that you can do. Writing to elected officials. There's somebody in everybody's office that is tasked with reading all the emails, all the letters, all the everything that comes in. And if it's really, really compelling, especially local politicians, they will call you in and ask to have a meeting with you to learn more about an issue. So writing can be a huge part of this. You know these: volunteering, donating, having those conversations. Maybe it's about privilege, maybe it's about gender. That you hear somebody say something disparaging and you gently, respectfully try to get them to consider the fact that maybe what they've said is problematic in some way. Those are awkward conversations to have, but they can be really, really important. So, sociology, goodness gracious, how many lectures have I cried in? But this one's really going to do me in. The beauty of this topic that lives in our lives daily, that lives in academia in the way that it does, is that it teaches you like to care about others, to think about how we're in this together, to think about the way that institutions treat us fairly, unfairly, all these different types of things. And so to be able to empathize and think about what somebody else is going through is a huge, huge part of things that we can all do. And then finally, well, this is a privilege in society and is not always necessarily easily accessed for everyone, and that needs to be remembered. And I am not a political science instructor, and I cannot talk to you about the large scale forces of elections and electoral colleges and all that type of stuff. It is nowhere near my level of expertise. But I will tell you this: as a parent with a local school district and parents around in the school district that got involved in creating social change, advocating for bond measures that built buildings and things along those lines. I was a part of all of that work in my local school district. And the first time trying to get a bond measure passed in order to build new buildings at the 4 high schools in the school district, the bond measure in the local election, I think it lost by maybe like 100 and not even quite 160 votes. And so while we can have nuanced conversations about the large scale aspects of elections, I have seen firsthand that local elections, they're won by dozens of votes. Like your voice matters, being an educated voter matters, thinking about the ways that when we have this opportunity, the ways that we can help shape the world by being educated voters and making sure that we take care of society in this way. These are things that we all can do. Okay, last topic. Hopefully, you've heard of the butterfly effect. I don't think I do a very good job of explaining it, but we'll see. Um, Edward Lorenz was like a mathematician and a meteorologist in like the, I don't know, 1950s or something, and had run like this whole, think about like computers were gigantic machines, had run this whole mathematical equation through the computer and then made like this tiny little change, like way after the decimal point, like minuscule little change to the equation, and like ran it through the computer again. I don't know, went and grabbed lunch or something and came back and saw the fact that that tiny, tiny little change had actually impacted the overall way that the equation worked out. And so, because he studied mathematics and meteorology, he likened this phenomenon to a weather event. So, think about a butterfly and it's fluttering around. And the idea is that little flutter in the world, adds up and it creates momentum and ultimately can create a large weather event, storm or hurricane, granted, or a tornado, not necessarily weather events that anybody wants to endure per se. But that idea again of momentum building, people volunteering creates momentum, people having conversations creates momentum, people learning and reading and listening creates momentum. Now, granted, technically you can create momentum in the other direction too. Like it's not always necessarily happy, positive, supportive things. So thinking about the butterfly effect and what things can you do? What things are you willing to do? Because maybe you are willing to be a social justice warrior and you want to create social change for the rest of your life. And thank you, thank you, thank you. But maybe some of you don't see yourself in that arena, but there's still so many little butterfly effect type things that you can do to make a difference. And so that's where we're at. We have spent a semester together. You have had to listen to my voice go on and on and on, and I really appreciate it. I also really appreciate like when you all say like kind words about like the lecture. I'm like, really? Like, thank you. Thank you for listening to me ramble about these topics that I've been so lucky to teach for 13 years now. Thank you for all of the effort that you put into exploring these topics in ways that are so deeply meaningful. Thank you for your kindness to others when you interacted, even though, we don't get to interact as much in an asynchronous online class. And thank you for spending some time learning about sociology. Um, I have told you before, I'll tell you again, I love it so dearly, and I love the chance that I get to share these topics with you. I know that they have been transformational to me, and I truly, truly hope that they have made a difference to you too.